thanks for coming out and watching the third installment of the Tommi Makinen Edition Evo 6 video that I've been making. So in this installment, I'm going to go over some of the final things that we did to get the car back on the road, and that's doing some interior work, replacing the dash, painting the car, the disassembly and reassembly of that, as well as purchasing new emblems, cleaning the car up a little bit, and some of the engine work that was done. So I hope you enjoy this installment. So in correcting some of the items that came with the car from Japan, going into the interior work, there were a few pretty big issues. So one of my pet peeves is a damaged dashboard. Now in the Evo 6 TME that I was restoring, the dashboard in particular, along the cluster area, the last owner had drilled a hole right through the dashboard, and that was to feed probably some sort of an electronic component through, or a vacuum reference for gauge, something like that. And then on the other side of the dashboard, so the right side of the dashboard near the steering wheel, there was a big glob of adhesive, and that was from gluing down some sort of a gauge pod or something like that. Now I went and tried my best to sort of clean the dash and kind of get it back up to spec, but at the end of the day that whole thing had to come out. Luckily for me, I did have a good condition dash from an earlier car that I was working on, and the dashes for the Evolution 4, 5, and 6 are interchangeable. So I was able to swap this in and out. I have photos of that I'm going to show you, and but pulling a dash out of a car is sort of a long process. So now while the dashboard was out, I addressed all of the electrical issues. Of course, with a car that's been around for 20 plus years, there's been people in there putting alarms in, different stereos. So we also addressed the harness and got that repaired as well. Now another item under that dashboard that needed some attention was the barn door that's on the heater core. So what that does is it's actuated by a small servo with an electronic motor in it, and what happens is that when you put the heater onto defrost, it closes the door again with a servo and a rod, and what that does is it redirects the heat into the cabin of the car. Now that was broken. Now one of the side effects of that, if you do have that with your Evolution 4, 5, or 6, is that you'll hear a really loud click, and what that is the gear actually probably missing teeth, struggling to open and close that door. You'll also have an issue with getting the cabin to actually heat up, so there won't be any heat in the car because that door will either be open or all the way closed, so you either can't shut off the heat or you can't turn the heat on. So those servos do have some crossover with some Mirages and things like that, but they are a little bit hard to get. So that was another thing that I had to address. I did end up getting a hold of one, and it's good. It ended up providing me with a situation where I could get heat back into the car. Now, a few things that were done with the engine of the Tommi Makinen Evo 6 were the studs that come off of the front of the engine, holding on the exhaust manifold and the turbo. Now, the exhaust manifold was coming off anyway because years ago I was lucky enough to buy a brand new Tommi Makinen turbo. These turbos have a titanium center section, which allows them to spool about 500 RPMs quicker than the other ones, the regular Evo 6 ones. And so they are a bit hard to get. And so I ended up purchasing this for cheap. A friend of mine saw it advertised locally. I have no idea why this person had a brand new Tommi Makinen Edition 15G turbo, but he did. And I ended up buying it for fairly cheap. And so that was a very nice thing, because when I got this car, it had already had 100,000 kilometers on it. There was some deterioration, not of the turbo directly, but the exhaust studs and a few other things. So it felt better to me to replace all of that, put on the new titanium turbo, and as well, while I was there, put on a nicer exhaust manifold and change out all those studs. Now the studs were fairly deteriorated as well. I have some pictures of that, and those I carefully backed out and I put in brand new Mitsubishi studs. And keep in mind, if you ever do this project, the bottom row of studs across the head do need thread sealant on them, because they do go into the a water channel in the head. So keep that in mind when you do them. So here we're just taking a look at the engine bay. There's been quite a few things that have been done with it. We used to have a blow-off valve that was a vent to atmosphere. We're going to be putting in Evo 9 recirc valve, just so that the vehicle runs a little bit better. Also, we had some deterioration going on with the exhaust studs coming out of the head. So those have been replaced. We just finished up with that. Just a lot of cleaning and just bringing things back to where they should be. So all the exhaust studs have been reset into the head with OEM Mitsubishi stuff. Also, if we take a look up here, with used cars, you're always going to find things like this. So right here we have the sensor that's in the O2 elbow off the turbo. Look at that. It's just spooled up and just hidden under the plastic panel here that covers the coil packs. So that's going to be corrected, obviously. We take a look here. We have a fresh turbo ready to go in. And you can see that there's another sensor there that we've already replaced, so we'll be taking care of that issue. This is going to be a brand new Tommi Makinen turbo here that we had sitting in the shop. There was nothing really wrong with the old one, but we had this here, so why not throw in a fresh one. And we also threw on a new Turbo Smart wastegate. So now, funny thing about the bumper that I hadn't mentioned earlier in this video, I guess at some point, I guess me included, I was thinking about why the Tommi Makinen edition had that 6.5 designation. Well, truth be told, when I was taking apart that bumper, I realized that on the back of the bumper and on the back of a lot of the bumper components, Mitsubishi actually lists the bumper as a 6.5 edition, and it's actually stamped into the bumper. And so I found that pretty interesting, that, well, where did that 6.5 come from? I guess, I mean, just thinking about it logically, it was probably released after the Evo 6, and so, you know, to celebrate some rally wins, and so clearly 6.5 would make sense, but I didn't know if that was actually a Mitsubishi thing, and to my surprise, it actually is a Mitsubishi thing. So now, in the process of painting this whole car, like I said, we had to do the door jambs, under the hood, under the trunk, all of these pieces. The spoiler had to come apart to be painted. That in itself is a pretty big job. The mirrors had to come apart. Now, when you do a color change on a car, it's a little bit different than doing a color, just a respray, right? If you respray a car, a lot of the times you can respray it mostly assembled. You know, maybe you're pulling the door handles out, maybe you're pulling the bumpers off, but mostly you can keep the car together, which makes it a lot easier. Now on a color change, the doors have to come off, the jambs have to be done, The hinges have to be done on the doors. You know, the trunk, we had to pull the trunk off, do the inside of the trunk, the inside of the hood separate from everything else. This was a very big process. And in my mind, I can understand why some people shied away from buying this car, because a few people did have the opportunity to buy this car for cheap. However, looking at it from a perspective where the amount of work to put this vehicle back to its original condition was just massive. Now, as soon as you start pulling a car apart, you want to spend money on the door belt moldings, the rubber gaskets that go on the rear arches, the trim that runs up the windshield, down the hood, you know, the trim that runs under the wipers. So it turns into a situation where you end up spending a little bit more money than you plan to. Not only that, you have to source the decals that were on the TME, like that trunk decal, which isn't necessarily all that easy to get from Mitsubishi anymore. Mitsubishi Japan has some stock periodically, but also they sell out quite often as well. I know right now the three diamond emblems on the front grille, you can't find them anywhere, even from Mitsubishi. And just a year ago, they did have some in stock. So chasing down these parts is a huge pain. You know, on top of that, the wheels. Like I said in an earlier video, those wheels have a special pearl color that has no paint code. Enki came up with it, and so the wheel shop that I used was nice enough to try and duplicate it, and they did a great job. But all of those things stacked together, it's a pretty daunting task when you have a car that was changed as much as this one. But given the price that I paid for the car, I for sure thought it was worth it. Thank you very much for watching my videos. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try and get out videos as often as I can. Most of my videos are going to be about JDM right-hand drive vehicles, which is what I enjoy to work on. I have some Skyline R32 GTR videos coming up, some more Evo videos, so stay tuned. And like I said, please subscribe and like these videos, and I'll keep making them. Thanks very much.